It's going to be very difficult for Shaun Micallefs to be able to send this up.
Wiki wiki wah, wiki 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 wah wah wah, wiki 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 wah wah wah. Wiki wah. Thank you. Well, congratulations, Australia. We are having an election. Now, Now, for those of you who don't know how it works, a Prime Minister and a Governor-General get together and something very special happens. Something very wonderful and magical and beautiful. And then 6 weeks later, after a very painful Labor and LNP campaign, a new government is born, or an old one. As we know, though cameras weren't allowed in, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, visited the Governor-General on Sunday morning, where they had some private PMGG time together, and then the PM made the announcement on behalf of the happy couple. Now, I think we all suspected something like this would happen the night before the PM declared to the world that he loved Australia so much that he'll often selflessly work alone into the night to arrange pretend cabinet meetings for his social media posts. Anyway, I think I speak for all of us when I say, if we'd taken precautions, this would never have happened. Indeed. Now, the big question for us, though, is what we should go with as a slogan for our election campaign coverage. Election 2022, it's not a race. No? What about this one? Entropy 2022? No. Democracectomy 2022? Oh, you like that one? That's good. Okay, hang on, no. Don't peek yet. We one last one. Democracken 2022. That's the one we should go with, because it was the last one. Incidentally, quite a few people have accused the PM of having his voice altered in that video he released. I'm not sure. Let's have a listen.
I will find you, and I will kill you.
No, that sounds like him. That sounds like him. But right now, let's cross to the National Tally Room and see how things are going. Stephen, hi. How's Macquarie looking? Does Susan Templeman look like she'll hold on to that seat for Labor, or has there been a swing to the Libs?
Too early to tell, Shaun.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen Hall there. Not prepared to call Macquarie just yet, but certainly one to watch. Now, while the campaign trail this week provided some relief for the PM from attacks from within his own party, the vitriol now being outsourced to the general public, Anthony Albanese sensibly chose to appear on camera with someone less likely to challenge him on policy or ask him about the unemployment rate. But Mr Albanese, or as the Deputy Prime Minister refers to him,
Mr Albanese,
showed he was just as comfortable and welcoming with constituents who had developed the power of speech.
I've got a tough question.
Hang on.
Are you up for it? I've got a tough question. Are you up for it?
I'm absolutely up for it.
Okay, good.
And sorry, we can't really do that. The protocol, the Media Alliance will be a bit upset.
Yeah. Get me out of here immediately. It's protocol. That vision, by the way, is courtesy of Sky News, whose election coverage is by far the most thorough, as evidenced by this report on Premier McGowan and Mr Albanese's press conference.
Just before they left, decided to stop in and grab a kebab.
Now, I understand Sky News subsequently contacted Mr Albanese's office seeking more details on the choice of sauce and other condiments for the kebab, and they say they'll release those details closer to the election. But I must say that now the election has been called, Labor have really hit the ground crawling. Their merchandise is out, and as you can see there, is predicting the number of seats they'll hold after the election. But even before the official announcement on Sunday, they wasted absolutely no time cocking up their core policy platform on aged care. That is, having a registered nurse on duty 24/7 in every aged care facility.
Have you calculated how many nurses will be needed, how much this will cost, and how long it will take?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, we do need more nurses.
That many? But fair enough, I suppose. I mean, they've had an idea. You can't expect them to have worked out whether or not they can actually do it. What Labor are pinning their hopes on, though, is that they can replace some aged care residents with these much lower care dummies. But what we should be critical of, though, is the blatantly wrong and misleading information they're putting out, like this tweet from Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers.
Comparing average unemployment rates but getting the numbers the wrong way around, showing it higher under Labor.
And that know the facts there, that's obviously Jim Chalmers' note to himself. Still, I don't want to spend the show like I usually do making jokes about Labor. What about the coalition, you say? Aren't there some jokes I could make about them? How about some balance, you LNP stooge? Well, calm down. Calm down, because coming up, the Liberal Party campaign director's timely advice for the PM.
You better do something.
And an exciting but unfunded pre-election sweetener from the Defence Minister.
There's a potential of conflict within our region within just a couple of years.
Mind you, if that's the case, is it a good idea to be sending the few bits of military equipment we have off to Ukraine? Our political affairs reporter Lois Price joins us now from the Mad Ass helicopter.
Hi, Shaun!
And Lois, we're now shipping off some 20 Bushmaster armoured vehicles to Ukraine. I am slightly offended by the sexist name, though. Do we not have any Bush mistresses?
Well, I know my ex-husband had one.
Armoured?
Nah, armoured was his brother.
And they've been painted a different colour too, as I understand it.
Yeah, my cousin Eddie's been doing it.
Really?
Yeah, normally he does it to cars before shipping them interstate.
On the election, though, Lois, what have you made of the relentless pile-on Scott Morrison of late?
Well, from my position high in the sky, this looks like a Liberal Party strategy because everybody's been dumping on him so hard that people are starting to feel sorry for him. So between now and the next election, I expect we'll see the entire parliamentary Liberal Party plus John Howard slag him off big time to make him more likeable.
Risky.
It is risky, but worth a go, Shaun. Just like the new pineapple and snail pizza from the Pizza Lane 2. Juicy snails, tin pineapple, drizzled with porridge and cooked in a kerosene-fired oven. Ask for the new 20-centimetre high thick crust and receive a complimentary burner phone. I'm Lois Price for Mad as Hell.
Thanks very much, Lois.
Yeah, I can't talk, Shaun. I can see the PM's campaign bus and I'm going to land me an interview.
OK. Lois Price there. Now, for those of you who think the government's recent flurry of spending in the defence sector is a mad scramble to make up for 10 years of their neglect following on from 6 years of Labor's, let Josh Frydenberg put your mind and quite probably your entire body at rest.
We have been building ships that are now in the water. We have been ensuring Australia get access to the latest planes that are now in the air, and we've been repairing and maintaining our combat vehicles that are now in service.
And we've been ordering submarines that are now in filing cabinets. But now comes the news that Australia will develop long-range missiles that can travel at least 5 times the speed of sound, which might not be all that impressive given the speed of this sound.
The equal lowest in 48 years.
They wouldn't stay airborne at 5 times that speed. But I'm being a negative Nelly. Let's listen instead to a positive Pete.
Peter Dutton wants Australia to eventually become an exporter of missiles.
And I'm quite sure he'd quite like to export some in the direction of China. Now, obviously, given China's capabilities, we're going to need thousands and thousands of these things. So what capacity do our current launch platforms give us? About 75 missiles at any one time. And if a handful of submarines and 75 missiles don't put the wind up China, our Defence Department doesn't know what will. A few weeks ago, it was announced that we would be increasing the size of our ADF from 60,000 personnel to almost 80,000 by 2040, bringing us within just 2.1 million of China's standing army. Now, I'm no military strategist, but if we're invaded and each of our troops is having to fight off 27 people, surely the best we can hope for is complete annihilation.
Exactly, Shaun, and that's why AUKUS is coming to our rescue with these hypersonic weapons. And just in time, too. Because as good as the old Lee Enfield is, we're going to need something with more range.
All right, so if our troop expansion won't have happened until 2040, our submarines aren't getting here until 2050, how long do we have to wait for these new missiles to arrive?
Well, Josh says that they'll get here as soon as is practical. Mind you, Barnaby is more optimistic and says they could get here probably about 14 minutes after they're launched. Of course, that would involve us buying them from China.
Might not having these new long-range hypersonic missiles here make Australia a target?
Well, that's why we have the missiles, Shaun, to deter those who wish to shoot that target.
Yes, but if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be a target.
But if we're not a target, then we won't look important, Shaun. It's the old chicken and egg situation.
Well, wouldn't it be better if it was just the old chicken situation, you know, just for us not to be a threat to anyone?
Oh, we'll have plenty of time to be harmless and ill-prepared while we're waiting for these missiles, Shaun. If we're not attacked by anyone in that period, then we might consider waiting even longer for delivery of them. Maybe even cancel the missiles altogether. It's certainly worked as far as the submarines are concerned. Not only haven't we needed them, by the time we get them in 2052, all the oceans will have boiled away and the Chinese can just march over here on our dead coral to enslave us. But you must remember, Shaun, that these missiles are just a deterrent.
All right, so you never need to actually fire them.
I doubt we'd even know how. But that's how you keep the peace, at gunpoint.
Well, presumably then the gun doesn't even have to be loaded.
Oh, God, no. The missiles can be cardboard. The missile shield's made out of plastic. China does the same thing. Have you seen their soldiers?
No.
Shop mannequins, the lot of them. There's a man crouched down behind them operating their heads on a spindle.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Well, Bobo, thank you very much. Before you go, though, Bobo, a quick Rorschach ink blot test.
All right.
Here we go.
A cockroach with his hands on his hips.
Interesting. All right. This one.
2 men meeting to go bowling.
All right, OK. Now, there's no right or wrong answers here. And, Bobo, this final one.
The promotion of gender equality through driving inclusive cultural change.
Really? I can't see it myself. All right, well, thank you very much, Bobo.
Might I take that one with me?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, Australia's... Thank you, Bobo. Australia's concerns about China are well known. India, meanwhile, refuses to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine and continues to trade with Moscow, particularly in oil. And so Australia has made its view of India's actions very clear to the international community by signing a free trade agreement with them. Still, I don't want to take anything away from the good work of our Trade Minister, Dan Tehan. The trade deal is a historic one and has been cheered by wine exporters and sheep farmers all over the country. But dairy farmers and grain farmers, not so much, because their stuff is excluded. Panickety Krill from DFAT and the person responsible for making sure that Dan doesn't wander off in traffic when he goes overseas as part of various trade delegations. Australia doesn't make much stuff people want, so why exclude any of our few primary industries?
Shaun, Dan tried his best, he really did, but India just wasn't interested in some things. Beef, for example. We offered them some live cattle exports. We even offered to kill them over here, but for some reason they weren't interested. Same with chickpeas.
We have urged sanctions against China if they continue to do business with Russia, given that India hasn't even condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine, let alone that they're still buying oil from them. Why are we doing business with them?
Shaun, there's a big difference. Our trade relations with China are already cactused, so it's no skin off our nose if we threaten them with sanctions. With India, though, there's money to be made, and maybe even a way of getting some of that cheap Russian oil into the country under the counter.
Sure, but if we're as important a customer for India as Dan says we are, couldn't we have used our buyer's leverage to encourage India to behave more like a responsible global citizen?
Dan doesn't want to cause any trouble, Shaun. He came back from France red-faced and empty-handed last year after 2 weeks of sitting in his hotel room not having his calls returned. It was humiliating. And this from a man who has absolutely no self-esteem and barely any self-awareness. Let him at least have this. I mean, look how happy he is.
It's just wonderful, wonderful news.
Oh, Dan, he's like Lenny with a new rabbit. Plus, who else are we going to sell our uni degrees to and have get married in front of our heritage sites? Last time I looked, there weren't too many countries in our region with billions of people in them prepared to come over here and throw their Mickey Mouse currency around. With China hating us as much as they do, how else do we get people to come over? The last joint we got anyone from was Nauru, and they were just sending our own refugees back.
Is Dan at least trying to rebuild bridges with China?
Absolutely, Shaun.
Good.
Don't be fooled by his gormless, vacant, hillbilly exterior. Inside that man beats the wind-up monkey with symbols trade dealer that'd leave Marco Polo himself lying in a bathtub full of ice cubes with only one kidney. Look.
Now, trade policy has been proactive, it's been principled, and it's been patient. And it's those 3 Ps that we've adopted because they're an important way for us to conduct our trade policy.
Dan is offering what all Australians have been yearning for in all government policy areas, Shaun. Alliteration. Proactive, principled, patient. Or the 3 Ps of grant scheme policy. Pork barrel, pump prime, partisan. Or like the 3 U's of aged care policy. Useless, underfunded, unforgivable.
Well, handy mantras to have in these troubled times. Thank you very much, Panickety. And please accept this ant on behalf of Manderson. Now, they say rats leave a sinking ship. What they don't tell you is that on their way out, they often pause for a moment to appoint their friends to cushy, well-paid positions on various boards and commissions and tribunals. And it's on that I'd like to offer a scintilla of plain speaking. Now, the Attorney General, Micallefs, has been criticised over several of her recent appointments to the AAT, but she says...
If you want to raise that, if you've raised that issue.
The 19 new appointments, Senator Carr, are legally qualified, including 8 barristers. I would argue that having those legally qualified people is an asset to the AAT.
Miss Spokesperson for the Attorney General, Mary Brett Punish, I'm legally qualified, and as I think my career proves, it doesn't mean anything.
Shaun, can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
Why do you persist in showing that same footage of Micallefs marching every time you mention her on the show?
Well, I'm very sorry. How about this one instead? Anyway, so being legally qualified doesn't necessarily mean you're an expert on the right type of law, does it? I mean, Dyson Hayden, for example, may have been a High Court judge, but he was hardly an expert in sexual harassment law.
Shaun, Micallefs is legally qualified, and these appointees are legally qualified. And being legally qualified is an asset, as Micallefs says.
Given in particular, you are required to have a look at decisions, to have a look at legislation, etc.
Now, when she says etc., does she in fact mean etc.?
OK, now you're just mocking Micallefs for how she speaks.
No, I'm mocking her for what she says when she speaks. I assume that if she had a law degree, she'd be able to speak Latin. 15
of the 19 appointees are legally qualified, Shaun. That is her point.
Yeah, sure, but Prue Goward isn't. I mean, how is she qualified to sit on the AAT?
Well, in relation to Prue Goward, Micallefs went on to explain.
Yep. Well, in relation to Prue Goward, I mean, again, I think for her, her qualifications stand for herself.
Yeah. How do her qualifications stand for herself? Did she mean speak for themselves? Because whatever they are, they would have done a better job in Senate estimates than Micallefs.
Well, I wish you people would make up your mind. You are constantly banging on about quotas and how we've got a women problem. Yet when we appoint one to a position, regardless of merit, you're still complaining.
OK, do you want to go there?
Yes, let's go there.
OK, Micallefs defended the PM against yet another complaint by a female Liberal MP accusing him of being a bully, and she said this about the PM.
I can assure you that he is someone who is a strong leader. He's also someone that is not always going to agree with you, but he backs himself in every step of the way.
Now, when she says the PM backs himself in, does she mean he backs himself? Because backs himself in suggests he's backed himself into a corner, which is where people end up when they haven't thought through things properly.
Shaun, Scott backs himself in like a car into a parking space so he can get out quicker and go home when the game's over. But in terms of sexist bullying, Micallefs says this.
In terms of my own personal relationship with Scott Morrison, I have only ever found him someone who is genuinely committed to delivering for all Australians, regardless of gender. I look around the cabinet table upon which I sit. We have the highest number of women in cabinet. I sit on it as a woman. That's what I am.
She sits on the cabinet table?
She genuinely does.
Mary Brett Punish, thank you.
Thank you.
Bad news, numbnuts. Your partner's been poached by the real version of what we've been parodying for the past 4 years.
By the actual mystery road, but that doesn't make any sense.
Remember when Shaun was in that Dracula Sea Change sketch in the Micallefs program, and then the next season of the actual Sea Change, he turned up as Sigrid Thornton's love interest? It's like that.
Oh, stick a bloody socket at the two of you. This thing is meta enough as it is without that sort of shit. We need to get you a new partner that satisfies Screen Australia's diversity requirements before the next round of funding, or we're going to find ourselves deader than Series 2 of Welcher and Welcher.
Well, hang on, I thought you said...
And I thought I told you to stick a bloody sock in it.
I want to see my Aqua's equity represented.
You'll see the back of my hand glancing off your stupid face if you don't watch it.
How can she see it if she doesn't watch it?
You too, you glorified extra. Meet your new partner. Now get out there in the Australian outback and start looking at things broodingly.
This is gender diversity gone mad.
Why didn't I get the role? I've been on the show longer.
Who said anything about gender, you sexist pigs? Can't she be hired on merit alone?
Plus, I have a nut allergy.
You shave off that ridiculous beard and grow a different one, and you put on a bloody dress. This show is going to be diversity blind, or my name isn't Conchetta Hernandez de Leon Casongo.
Curiosity cul-de-sac. I'm telling you, I know where it's at.
The garbage is collected, dumped into a truck, and then taken to a huge tip where it will be pushed around a bit, indiscriminately picked up, reduced to bilge, and then, with very little change, released onto the streets again as News Corps publications.
That's Just a Bit of Fun, presented by Shaun Micallefs, Sundays at whatever.
And welcome back to Mad as Hell's election campaign coverage. I'm joined now by Liberal Party senior ukulele instructor, Dramella Burke. DB, despite Scott Morrison's character being savaged by his opponents and by the Labor Party, the Deputy PM claims that these questions are of little concern, saying the leader is a bit like a dentist. You don't have to like the person or dislike them. When they've got a drill in your mouth, you trust them to do the job. How is Scott Morrison like a dentist? When people see him, do they have raised levels of anxiety? Do they spit blood and feel numb afterwards?
Well, I'm not authorised to reveal the results of our internal polling. So.
But he's tried to shift the focus, though, hasn't he, onto his opponent? If I could show you this by way of example.
Anthony Albanese wants to slide on in under the scrutiny.
Now, under the scrutiny? Did he mean radar? Because you'd want Albo to be under the scrutiny, wouldn't you?
Well, fuck knows what he means, Shaun. I mean, I swear to God, between he and Barnaby, it's like their speeches were put together by having a dugong sneeze out a set of magnetic Scrabble tiles onto a whiteboard. But yes, presumably he means Albo is trying to slip into power unnoticed under the cover of Scott's universal and burgeoning unpopularity.
The PM's got some lead in his economic management saddlebags, though, hasn't he, around waste, particularly the $5.5 billion we're paying France for the submarines they're not making us. Because $5.5 billion, that's enough for Labor to pay for their aged care package twice.
Yeah, something those economic dunderheads are quite likely to do, Shaun.
There's also climate change. Labor have said they'll bid to host a UN climate change summit if elected.
Well, that's not a promise to do anything about climate change. It's a promise to host a verbal circle jerk with a bunch of hand-flapping, hemp-suited warmisters. It's like throwing a BYO barbecue. You're not doing anything about the meat or the booze. You're just a venue with a fire.
Gentlemen, can I ask you about the bullying accusations levelled against the PM?
Oh, look, Shaun, Scott has made it quite clear to Australians that they don't care about what people say about him, and if they do, it's not true. They care about strong economic growth and not trusting Labor, and that he doesn't have a women problem.
Sure, but has Scott Morrison ever bullied you, regardless of whether you're a woman or not?
Well, I am a woman.
Yeah, I know that, but for our purposes, that's irrelevant.
Oh, I'll say.
Well, have you ever seen him bullying others?
Well, if others have been bullied, I'll leave that for them to whine about. I've never experienced it, and as far as I'm concerned, my experience beats theirs.
Right, so it's like rock, paper, scissors,
Exactly.
Is it?
With the rock being how solid the PM support is, and the paper being how thin these allegations are.
And the scissors?
Well, they're in a drawer, so Richard Colbeck can't run around with them.
So why are people saying he's a bully if he isn't one?
Well, people have their ulterior motives, Shaun, as this carefully leaked article to the Daily Telly makes clear.
Well, isn't leaking against your opponents exactly the sort of thing a bully would do?
Well, if you want to see what bullying looks like, Shaun, you only have to look at everyone ganging up on poor Scott these last few months. It's been a relentless campaign of undermining and trolling, talking behind his back, rumours, gossip, innuendo and lies. I mean, look at what he has to put up with when he's trying to relax and unwind at a table in a food court, or when he's walking along a shopping mall with his entourage, minding his own business. I mean, Scott can certainly do without that sort of thing, and frankly, so can people trying to enjoy the news of an evening. If people want to see some old guy ranting about what a terrible job the PM's doing running this country, they can tune in and watch you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Dre Mellor, and please accept on her behalf your own picture.
No, thanks.
No, I don't want that. OK, very good. Well, up soon, housing prices, and not up anytime soon, wages. Plus, at last, the real story of why Tasmania's Premier quit.
I've got nothing left in the tank.
And at these prices, it's no wonder. But to you next, Darius Horsham. You've seen a few elections in your time. How do you think this Michael Toke business will affect the PM's credibility in the lead up to the election?
Not one iota, Shaun. This election is about the people, not the person who wants them to vote for him. It's not about integrity and transparency and accountability and honour and telling the truth. It's about other things that have nothing to do with the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. It's about not being economic curly men and kids in trade schools putting up half their hands up to run a business. Most importantly, it's about having a go to get a go.
Yeah, well, Michael Toke tried to have a go, but he didn't get a go.
He got a go, but it went.
Michael Toke says a federal cabinet minister backs him in his claim that he was racially vilified by the PM in the pre-selection ballot that saw his victory reversed. Any idea who that cabinet minister might be?
Well, who stands to gain the most if the Scott Morrison loses the election?
Every man, woman and child in Australia?
Now, remember, they are a federal cabinet minister.
Oh, right. Josh Frydenberg and Peter Dutton, because they are contenders to replace Morrison as leader.
Oh, and what about those cabinet ministers so bent on revenge that they would rather blow up the election than see Morrison win?
Of course, yes. Bridget McKenzie. She took the rap for the whole sports rorts affair.
Or a certain education minister who Scott might have thrown under the bus, but who, as a former infrastructure minister, had to carry the can for the car parking roads.
Alan Tudge.
And what about Linda Reynolds? He didn't exactly come to her defence during that whole lying cow business.
I'm going to write this down.
3 hours later.
And he might have done it because almost everything he has done has been wrong, ill-conceived, poorly executed and breathtakingly wrong-headed.
That's Stuart Robert. All right, thank you very much, Darius.
Fantastic.
And a question for you at home off the back of this description of Scott Morrison.
What I think we're seeing is a bit of a dead man walking.
Which bit? If you think you know the answer, you could win a Greg genetic sequencer. Unravel the mysteries of your genome with his DNA analysis kit, delivering the same forensic detail you'd expect from the host of Afternoon Briefing. That's nice.
Worms. They're disgusting and they're gross, and I hate them. Look at this one. I just want to tread on it. This man, though, collects them. He has almost the whole set. And when complete, he will sell them to fancy French restaurants, where they will be cooked and eaten by this other man. Frankly, I'm not feeling all that well.
That's Shaun Micallefs' Worms That Make Him Want to Throw Up. Sundays at 14:04 and on iView.
Well, not coming up because Tomorrow Tonight is on in a minute. Driver confused by talk of carpooling. Woolworths unveils faster home delivery service. And packing school lunches, we share the most common mistakes. And before we go, a heads up that Sky News will be presenting a Mavericks debate during the election campaign, a face-off between Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer, along with Bob Catter and Campbell Newman. Now, that's an event where you'd want Will Smith to be in the audience. Goodbye.
Giant baby.
I sit on it as a woman. That's what I am.